Hurts lost it for Smith. It's a touchdown. Devontae Smith.
Bijan Robinson. Give him the ball. Touchdown, Texas. He's got room. Lamar Jackson. Open field. Inside the 20. He is in. Lamar. Spectacular.
Welcome to the Saturday Air Raid, part of the NFL Lab Network. I'm your host, John Roberts. With me, as always, my two good friends. It's Brad Bolt, and it's the Yeti, Dan O'Connell. Brad told me to say it. You can't hate me.
This is going to stick so bad now as well.
It is. It is now.
The amount of nicknames people come up with for me, what can I do?
It's definitely sticking now. And I said to John, I was like, we've got to intro the show as just calling him the Yeti. So now I've got to remember all show to call you the Yeti just to keep it up. So if anyone in the comments wants to ask Dan a question, just put attention to the Yeti.
Yeah, if you'd like to know what the hell we're talking about, you can follow me on Twitter at John Lloyd Roberts. You can follow Dan on Twitter at Beard_82, and you can follow Brad on Twitter at BradBolt1, as well as the NFL Lab Network on Twitter as well. We're talking wide receivers today to look forward to for this upcoming college football season. And there's quite a few, just like the running backs. There's plenty to talk about. Same with the quarterbacks. I think this receiver class is going to be pretty interesting. There's obviously no prizes for guessing who's number one, but we will go 1 through till 5. We'll go 1 through to 6 because number 1 is so obvious. How does that sound?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yep.
So I wanted to kick off by talking about the 2020 class. I wanted to take a little stroll back just initially for the first couple of minutes and talk about, I wish I'd been producing this show for the 2021 season and the 2019 college football season, because it was insane. If you can remember, if you think back to, at the time, it was like Jerry Jeudy was like the number one guy that everyone was talking about, along with CeeDee Lamb. It was sort of like those two guys for the Sooners and for Crimson Tide. Then other people had also been talking about Henry Ruggs at Alabama. He ends up going number 1. Then there's a huge run on receivers. Other names in that class that you might remember, Justin Jefferson. He was sort of like I think people had thought of him as like, yeah, he's a good receiver. He'll probably be really good in the NFL. He was obviously getting overshadowed by Jamar Chase at the time. Other receivers, Brandon Ayuk, T. Higgins. We all remember Brian Edwards hasn't quite worked out. Chase Claypool, Michael Pittman. KJ Hamler went in the second round pick as well. We talked about Van Jefferson still kicking around, Devin Duvernay, James Prochet still kicking around. Other names here, Darnell Mooney, KJ Osborne, as well as like even Nick Westbrook-Akine still kicking around, and Marquez Callaway, who's on the Broncos as well. What a class, and how it turned out from going from, Henry Ruggs 1, Jeudy was 2, was it? Or was it CeeDee Lamb 2?
No, Jeudy was the second wide receiver, I think. He was pick 15.
CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Reagor, Justin Jefferson.
Pick 17, and then, yeah.
Then Jalen Reagor was picked 21 to the Eagles, and 22 was Jefferson to the Vikings. And then
the Vikings did a massive happy dance when they saw that pick go in.
Yeah.
then then in the second round, it was T. Higgins was the first pick of the second round. I think it was about 2 or 3 picks later, Michael Pittman Jr. went to the Colts as well. So Loaded class.
It was a loaded class. I love talking about receivers in this context now to think about where we're going to place them. And even though, yeah, sure, number 1 is pretty straightforward. The rest of them, I think it's going to be on a sort of a similar plane to what we had back then. It's all going to depend between now and then. Like the way we didn't talk about Justin Jefferson back then as like the clear-cut number 1 guy. And I think a few guys could not be Justin Jefferson in this class, but could sneak up to that point. And I would not be surprised, for example, if, I don't want to give it away, but like if we look at some guys like, I don't think Malik Neighbors could, but maybe. So we're going to talk about that today and see how they go for this year.
Yeah, this class could be, I think you might end up seeing a lot of, say, Pro Bowlers from this. Yeah. I think there's one clear-cut guy who could potentially be that Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase tier of receiver.
Yeah.
I think everyone's going to know who that is. But we'll get to that in a moment. But other than that, I think we're going to have a lot of. I wouldn't be surprised, put it that way, if we have this class is a similar type of class where it's really top quality guys for years to come that everyone wants to get a hold of. And I'm really looking forward to this season to see how it all plays out.
Well, so on that note, Dan kicked off quarterbacks and I kicked off running backs. So, Brad, would you like to do the honors and intro the number one pick in this year's receiver class so far to date?
Sure.
And why is it not Marvin Harrison Jr.?
Yep. So number one pick we have is Moose Muhammad.
Moose Muhammad, great guy. 6'1", 205. Love it. Let's talk about it.
No, so Marvin Harrison Jr., he's potentially, I've looked around at some other people, what they've been saying too, and it was reported on, I believe, it might have been PFF. I read this on when they were giving a breakdown, and they said this could potentially be one of the best, if not the best, wide receiver prospect we've seen in years.
They were saying that he might just flat out be the most important player in the league to any team at any position.
You could, like, everyone talking about how, like the Panthers trade this year to go from 9 to 1. Like, can you imagine what a receiver needy team who wants a Marvin Harrison, what they might try and give up to try and move up to take him in a top 3 sort of pick?
I'm like actually upset that the Texans don't have their first round pick, so they can't make that connection that we're so used to now seeing these days. It's not going to happen. It kind of like makes me a little bit mad.
I have a feeling he might be a Bear. The draft.
Well, I mean, I have a feeling that Caleb Williams might be a Bear, but we talked about it already. If you'd like to go back and listen to that show, that was a couple of weeks ago.
I would actually, to me, I actually wouldn't be surprised if Caleb Williams is a Cardinal and then the Bears go after Marvin Harrison Jr. But could you, like, I was just thinking like that, if Justin Fields does like shows enough flashes this year, you could compare, like, I don't actually, doesn't matter what team, any team that gets Marvin Harrison Jr. is just walking in with a guy of that. I guess the way that we were all looking at Jamar Chase the year he came out, he was clear cut number 1, and everyone was like, what about this guy and this guy? And then Jamar Chase came out in that first season and just blew the league away, and everyone was like, yeah, that's the guy. That's what Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be like, I think, this year.
I think he's about as safe as you can get. And there's a lot of talk about him being the actual best player in the draft, regardless of position as well.
Yeah. It's funny. So he's 6'4", 205 pounds. I've got him listed. I actually think he's a bit bigger than that. Last season, he put up 1,263 yards, 14 touchdowns. According to PFF, he had a 90.7 receiver grade. He had 36 explosive plays, which is 15 or more yards, 18 contested catches, 60% contested catch rate, 3.18 yards per route run. He is an insane route runner. I was doing an experiment. It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I remember him last year. He was awesome. There's like, I don't need to go back and watch the tape. And I was like, you know what? For this, I will just anyway do it. His, like, even just watching his highlight reels are like nearly twice as long as any other guy that you'll ever study because he just has so much to watch. I love the quote that he said as well from the end of last year. He says, if he didn't get injured during the Georgia game, they would have won for sure. Ohio State, that is. His All-American Receiver of the Year. His dad was an all-time great. He might legitimately be as good as his dad. My only question for this season, I'll put to you guys. So he had the luxury of CJ Stroud last season. He's going to Kyle McCord this season, who was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school. Like, I think we all know what Marvin Harrison is. Do you think there might be a drop off there?
It's hard to say at the moment. You look at how he plays, I don't think there's going to be a drop off from his side of things. It all comes down to obviously the quarterback play, getting him the ball. But when you've got someone like Marvin Harrison on the field, it doesn't matter, well, it still matters, but you've got a quarterback like Kyle McCord. He's still going to be able to get Marvin Harrison Jr. the ball.
Yeah.
Because of just how dominant that Marvin Harrison Jr. is. So as far as his ability and stats go and everything like that, I don't think the quarterback change now makes any difference at all, to be honest.
Can
And
we?
it-
Oh, yeah. Sorry, go, Brad.
No. I was just going to say, and Marvin Harrison, because he's got that reputation now, and as you mentioned, like a lot of people saying that he could be maybe just the best player in this draft. He could just not play this season, and he would still be a top 3 or 4 pick. I
Oh.
think.
Yeah.
He's just got that. He's got that aura about it. It's pretty much like when Jamar Chase, when he had his year, that everyone was just like, he's the top guy, doesn't play, whatever. That's pretty much how Marvin Harrison is. If he doesn't suit up or play a snap this season, he's still going to go super high. And you can clearly tell he's obviously come from a great pedigree background with his dad, and he's just understands how to be a wide receiver.
Yeah. The easiest decision a team will make if they need a wide receiver at the top of the draft.
I was actually struggling with comps for him. I had him, so I kept seeing Michael Thomas in him, but I think I just kept thinking that because of the Ohio State connection. I also saw a bit of DeAndre Hopkins in him just because of his ability to stretch his arms out and grab any ball in any sort of perimeter. Now, I'm not sure what his hand size is. I'm not sure. I don't think it is as big as Hopkins, but his ability to just be in space, defender draped all over him and still pluck the ball out of the air, I thought was incredible. There's so much about him that is incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got nothing else to add. Like we said, he's number 1 by an absolute country mile. So
before we move into, I'm going to jump into my number 2. Before we do that, let's have a chat about these receivers that CJ Stroud has been able to throw to over the last couple of years. We've got, so Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Marvin Harrison Jr., and then Emeka Egbuka, who we're about to talk about now. That is my number 2. I feel like I missed someone in that as well. I'm trying to think that they didn't go back too far. Obviously, not Curtis Samuel. Anyway, let's move on to Emeka Egbuka now, who is my number 2. Did anyone else? Did he land at number 2?
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, cool. So we're there as well. Again, was able to play last year with CJ Stroud. Going to be playing with Kyle McCord this season, so we'll see how that goes. I have a feeling Ohio State's still going to be just fine. I do, even though we haven't really seen Kyle McCord play any football. Have heard a lot of good things about him. So he's 6'1", 205. My comp for Egbuka was I saw a lot of Michael Pittman in him. And the reason I say that is because I felt like he's very, not physically different, but still the same sort of mechanics of being able to take on a receiver, get the ball, and then his yards after the catch, he would grab the ball and just go. His downfield ability was so fast and so good to watch. He had an 85.5 receiving grade. He had 5 drops all season, 9 contested catches at 52.9% and 526 yards after the catch. Really big slot guy, but when I say big, I'm not talking he's huge. But even though he only played 17% in the slot, he's got really great feet. And his ability to catch the ball over the middle, I thought was also awesome. Catches it over the middle and cuts corners to take it to the house. And that's where I kind of saw Michael Pittman in that. Your thoughts on Emeka Egbuka?
I just had here written down. I don't have too many notes, so you can go after me, Yeti. But I had him that he was I had him down as a true 3-level threat. So he's not one of these guys who's just he's going to run the go route and that's all he's got, or he's just going to run a slant and that's all he's got. He's a guy who can, as you were saying, John, can work over the middle of the field. He could, just throw him a ball on a quick bubble screen, or you can have him run the go route sort of thing. And I actually really liked his route running as well. He was really, from what I was seeing, I haven't seen all of his tape, but the games that he just really crisp routes. And one of the things that I'm not a huge fan of wide receivers are when a play might call for you've got to get out. You've got an out route. You've got to go 5 yards down the field and head to the sideline. My biggest pet peeve is a guy who takes it 7 or 8 yards.
Yeah.
And instead of making the sharp cut, they round out their route. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. I didn't really see too much of that from him. So and just really good downfield speed too. There's not too much I didn't like about him. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, basically everything you guys have said. I got his short area quickness, especially, is amazing. Like you said, he plays in the slot. He can play outside as well, and he can win all over the field. So basically, we all come to the same conclusions on him. I think it's one of those things where you've got Marvin Harrison Junior in a tier by himself.
Yep.
And then Emeka Egbuka comes down to the tier below, and he's by himself as well.
Yes, I do have it that way as well.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing that Ohio State can just like naturally just get the most talented receivers?
Stupid what they can do there. And talking about their wide receivers, their offensive wide receiver coach, I think he's wide receiver coach, not offensive coordinator, but Brian Hartline. What he can do with the wide receivers there is incredible. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how high he actually goes, because they could have both wide receivers go top 10.
And just talking about Ohio State's schedule to start the season, it is nice. They start with Indiana, then they play Youngstown State, like small school. Then they play Western Kentucky, who I'm excited to talk about potentially if you stick around for this episode. And then their first actual big game is against Notre Dame, which will be a big game. That's at Notre Dame. And then they play Maryland at home, who always play them tough, but we'll see. Then Purdue, then a huge game against Penn State. So that wraps up our Ohio State football chat we didn't get to talk about Kyle McCord in the quarterback show, but we did talk about Travion Henderson and Mayan Williams. And now we've just talked about Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka. I mean, this team, man.
I think there are good chances here.
They just go from strength to strength. Imagine if CJ Stroud was still playing for them. Wow. Okay. So Brad, I'm assuming that was number 2 for you as well, or thereabouts.
Yeah, he was number 2 for me.
Dan, let's jump to number 3 now for you, please.
So I went back and forth a bunch on this as well. Like I said, the tier from Marvin Harrison Jr. down to Egbuka, and then there's another tier down. And I think there's kind of a cluster of guys that could be sitting at number 3 at this point in time. But for me, I've got Rome Odunze. I just love what I see with him. He's got the combination of the size.
That's my number 3 as well.
Me too. We're all.
What are we doing?
I actually thought I'd be the only one who'd have him here. I thought I was high on him, so this is good.
I had him at 4, and then I pushed him up to 3. And I just think he's been there for a little while for me as well. He's got the size. He's 6'3", 211, I believe.
Yep.
The size, the speed.
I got
what's him at the catch point? What was that? 217?
27. So 6'2", 217. I got him at 67th and 75th percentile.
Oh, yeah. So that's amazing size. And you match it with his speed that he's got. And then you look at the catch point and the way you can concentrate and bring the ball in. He puts it all together. Like, he's still got a lot to improve as well, but he puts it all together. It's going to be scary to see how good he'll be in a couple of years' time.
Yeah.
So, and then, like I said, the ability to adjust to the off-target throws. He had Michael Penix Jr. as his quarterback.
Yeah. And
just the way he could adjust himself to get the off-target throws was impressive as well.
Yeah, you've pretty much covered what I was going to say. One of the things I really like that he does too is against press coverage.
Yeah.
He just snaps off that line, and he's got really good hand movement and balance to get off against press coverage. So that was my only other note that I had, because you pretty much covered everything that I saw, Dan. He's just one of these guys, like we said at the start, when you think back to that 2020 class of the guys who you think are just going to be really good, pushing that Pro Bowl, all-pro sort of region. He just seems like another guy who from day one is going to come in and is going to affect the team in a really positive way with what he can do.
Yeah.
My comp for him was Keenan Allen. And the reason I say that was because I just saw a lot of gets the ball, and this is the one downfall of his game, is the yards after the catch ability. It almost was non-existent, I kind of thought. Well, not non-existent, I shouldn't say that, but every play that I was sort of watching him, amazing route runner, but there would be a defender there and he struggled to get away from them, I felt. But amazing hands, which is what he excelled at. So as I was saying, still has Michael Penix Jr., which is going to be awesome for him that they can keep that connection because he is a great quarterback. Last season, 1,145 yards and 7 touchdowns. He also had a rushing touchdown as well. Like I was saying, he's not a huge data guy. Like he's someone that you actually need to watch with your eyeballs to really, truly appreciate. 79 receiving grade per PFF, 4 contested catches, 25% contested catch rate, 2.51 yards per route run, and 344 yards after the catch, which sounds good in theory. I think a lot of those were mostly busted coverages that Michael Penix was able to take advantage of, and it was usually typically against smaller schools. But yeah, I think that he's going to have a really great year. And like I said on the quarterback show with Michael Penix Jr., I think Washington were one of the only schools to have 2,000-yard receivers. I think Odunze is going to have a really fantastic season this season. It's going to be awesome to watch that USC game, personally.
Yeah, looking forward to it. And I don't have a player comp for him, but I don't actually mind that, as you're saying, John, that Keenan Allen type of, because I think he's got maybe a bit of speed, but not fast, if that makes sense. Like I think, in college he might be able to run past some guys, but I don't know whether he'd be able to do that in the NFL.
Yep.
I sort of think, if he happened to be playing against Seattle, I don't see him outrunning Tariq Woolen, but then again, I don't see too many people being able to outrun Tariq Woolen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see him outrunning too many defensive backs, but at the same time, he's got really good hands. It's just about when he's not in space, can he create separation? So we'll see, but he had some really great numbers last season, and I've got no doubt about him this season. So let's jump now to number 4, and I feel like this is where it starts to get a little bit more dicey. In fact, you could almost say that this guy, to me, is in a tier of his own that I have. Did anyone want to kick off their number 4? Are you happy to roll with what I was going to go with?
You go.
So I had Malik Neighbors from LSU as my number 4 guy. Any qualms?
I had him at 5. I had someone else in front of him, but they're pretty much the guy who I've got at number 4 is just personal preference for me.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think that one of the things that Malik Neighbors struggles with the most is the fact that his quarterback is Jaden Daniels, who hasn't thrown the ball a ton, although there's a lot of hype for him this season that he could be in contention for the Heisman Trophy. I think a lot of that production is going to come on the ground, though. So Malik Neighbors is 6 foot, 195 pounds, so a little bit smaller. Last season, he did have 1,000, and just the 3 touchdowns, though, was his sort of downfall. He did have a 77.6 receiving grade and 13 contested catches. 21 forced missed tackles was not bad at all. And he ran a 4.44 40 in high school. Also very nice. So he has that awesome acceleration. Having said that, though, and now I'm not sure about my comp, but my comp for him was sort of maybe like a lesser DJ Moore, just because I thought he was able to catch the ball really well on sort of like tight angles. He can contort his body very well. He is like physical enough. Having said that, 93% catchable passes were caught, which is like insane. So he's got really, really great hands, 69% contested catches. He is also a playmaker. It's a shame that LSU haven't been the juggernaut that they once were, because he probably would have thrived a lot better, but I'm excited to watch him. Malik Neighbors, anyone?
Yeah, I pretty much had very similar to what you said, like really good body control, and his catch radius is quite good. Does have that big playability. I do like the fact that, as I mentioned before, he runs pretty precise routes from what I saw. So it's just my concern for him would be his ability to consistently separate on like his vertical routes and stuff. So, he can do it every once in a while, but it's not really a guy that you can bank on every single time being able to do that. So that's pretty much all I had for Neighbors. What about you, Yeti?
Yeah, every time.
Yeah.
I had the same thing. Like, he's an incredible route runner. The way he can win off the line as well, he does it in a bunch of different ways.
Yeah.
So if you're a cornerback lining up opposite him, you're not going to really know what to expect each time. which is going to be a massive thing for him. He's got that short area quickness. He's going to be one of those guys where he's probably going to end up being even better once he gets to the NFL. Because like you said with Jaden Daniels, he's dealt with some inconsistent quarterback play as well.
Yes.
So, yeah, the knock I've got on him is when he comes up against more physical cornerbacks, which he'll have in the NFL. So that's how he deals with that. But I think once you get to the NFL, your strength changes completely for a lot of guys. And it's more of a focus. So I don't think he'll have too much trouble with that once he's in the NFL. So I've got him at 4. I think there was a couple guys, 2 or 3 guys there that you have him either way if you want, depending on what your personal preference is. But I think he's number 4 as well for me. So,
and exactly what you were saying, like in some of these games last season, like you look at the game against Auburn where he just had 2 catches for 26 yards, wasn't really anything there. Arkansas, 2 catches, 24 yards. These bigger schools he really did struggle with. Alabama, he had 6 catches, but for 49 yards. And like I said, he had 3 touchdowns all season. And in fact, 2 of those touchdowns came in the last 2 games, one against Georgia and the other against Purdue. So for the first 12 games of the season, he had one touchdown, which maybe it says more about Jaden Daniels than it does about Malik Neighbors, but let's see what he can produce this year. I think LSU will be better than last year. So at least they do have that going for them.
Yeah, so Neighbors was my number 5 receiver. I had someone else at number 4.
Let's jump in because we're at that point now where I think that we're all going to have someone different by the sound of it.
So I'm just going to say these are my concerns with this guy first, just because it's very similar to sort of Malik Neighbors. He's not super strong to beat physical corners, so it might cause a bit of concern for some people. He could potentially be like role specific or usage specific, depending on the team that he goes to. And that's why I want to see how he does this year and see if he stays in my number 4 spot or if he falls off. He could be a bit better, a bit more consistent on catching the ball on in-breaker routes, but his positives, super explosive speed, like quick acceleration as well. John's giving a smirk. I wonder if he can pick who I'm talking about or not.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's like, wait, who are we talking about? I'm not even like...
So he's versatile with his alignment. He's really good at tracking the ball, and I've got him as a plus level, like a really good level route runner, and that's Xavier Worthy.
Oh, that's not who I thought it was. That's funny.
I was watching Xavier Worthy, and I said to Dan, my comp for him was Devonta Smith's height, but Hollywood Brown's play style. So play like Hollywood Brown, but he's just taller. He's 6 foot, I think he is. I don't have his measurements actually here.
6'1", I believe.
6'1",
6'1", 160 pounds. That's got to be different now. But yeah, it's funny how just all skinny little receivers who are good get this Devonta Smith comp.
Yeah. It was mainly because of I sort of looked at first. I thought Devonta Smith the way he played, but it's not the way that Devonta played. Devonta you could use pretty much everywhere, whereas maybe Xavier Worthy might have to be scheme specific to start with. Pretty much the way that the Seahawks started with DK Metcalf in his rookie season. It was pretty much you had 2 routes that you had to run DK. It was go long and cut in short, and that was pretty much
that's all that Russell Wilson could throw.
Well, exactly, but that could be Xavier Worthy's that could be his role to start with. So. But I think his play style is a bit more Hollywood Brown. He's just that little bit taller. But yeah, Xavier Worthy was my number 4. But just from watching some of his film, I was just like, as soon as it came on, it sort of popped off the screen a bit for me. Some of these plays, so it stuck in my mind. So that's probably why I think maybe it's because he had the more explosive plays. Is probably why he's got that tick of approval above Malik Neighbors for me.
I went back and forth with him and Neighbors as well. And I just think the size is the biggest concern for Xavier Worthy, obviously. I think once it comes time for the combine, he'll pack on a bit of muscle by that time, I'd expect, which is a big boost for him. But his deep speed, he can take it to the house at any moment. And he can win underneath as well as a deep game as well. So he's going to be a matchup nightmare for any team in the NFL. So landing spot's going to be the biggest key for him, I think, as far as what we can expect from him, especially in that first season. But I really like him. I like him a lot more than I thought I would because I was down on him because of the size.
Mm.
But you watch him play and just the way he gets in and out of his cuts and the speed and everything like that, he's going to be hard to stop. So
Watch
I'll
him.
go with 5.
Watch him end up on the Miami Dolphins, and it really will be the Legion of Zoom. Like it's like pick your poison, Waddle,
Yeah.
Waddle, Worthy, or Hill. Like,
Do you imagine? Bloody hell.
but yeah, I think he could. He depends on this season, but I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised to see him as a first round receiver this year.
First round.
Yeah, I think maybe like back end of the first round, but I think it's.
Do you mean like just out of like sheer necessity, or
No, I think it's actually. We see most years it sort of feels like that there's always that one burner receiver who ends up being a first round pick because teams value speed.
yeah, okay.
And so I wouldn't be surprised to see him as a first round pick. Like I could see him creep into the back end of that first round as of like if it was right now, if the draft was right now, I could see a team trying to go, we can unlock him and we can, like I said, Miami would be a perfect sort of thing. They're like, you've got nothing to do because you've got Tyreek Hill sprinting past that way. You've got Jalen Waddle. You're going to have the entirety of the field open. We're just going to throw you the ball and you just run past everyone.
Yeah.
No, that's a good one. And Dan, you were saying that Xavier Worthy was your number 5 as well.
Yeah, I had him 5.
Well, then I guess that leaves me to go to my number 5, which I think that this might be a massive curveball for a lot of people. But I mean, I watched this guy play and I am like head over heels in love for seeing them for the first time. And I told you guys before we jumped on air, what have I told you that there was another Zay Flowers type in this class? And I don't mean like Zay Flowers' skill and ability, but Zay Flowers who played at Boston College, a small school, and just took the league by storm. For me, it's Malachi Corley from Western Kentucky, who I watch him play, and I just think this guy is amazing. Now, he has Austin Reed as his quarterback, who, look, to be honest, he's like a serviceable quarterback, and I'm not sure that he'll be drafted in next year's draft, but you know, he can get it done for what Malachi Corley needs. He's 5'11", 210 pounds. Last season, he had 1,300 yards and 11 touchdowns. He had 9 of 14 games with more than 90 yards. He led all of these guys that we're talking about. Everyone that we're talking about who's draft eligible this season, he led in receiving last year. So the only guys in front of him are now playing in the NFL. He had his weeks that he went off, week 4, week 6, week 7, and the bowl game. He had an 84.3 receiving grade, 6 contested catches. He had 975 yards after the catch. That's 76% of his catches. His average depth of target as well. So you think like, oh, okay, so Austin Reed was just killing them over the top. His average depth of target was 6.8 yards. So he's only just past the line of scrimmage when he's doing this kind of stuff. He had 31 explosive plays of 15 yards or more. And here's some of my notes for him. And my comps for him before I dive into this. So my high-end comp for him, I really see Chris Godwin in him, just in his ability to grab the ball, take on defenders, move, run around people. He can see the field really well, and he knows which way he wants to go. If he wants to run around people, and if he doesn't, he runs into them. Low end for me was like a Ray McLeod type. Like if you give him space, he can take these balls to the house. So I said he'll win in the catch at the point of catch and bowl defenders to the ground at the same time while keeping his feet. Has insane change of direction, and when he knows he won't make it, he runs through defenders. He's like Ray McLeod on end arounds, and if you give him space, he'll work with it. His big play ability is through the roof. He's a quick decision maker. He played against smaller schools and he dominated them. But even when he came up against bigger schools, he was still really good. He had a huge play against UTSA where he takes the full force of the defender who goes to the ground. He stays on his feet. He just starts running around all these other defenders and along the line. and to that point, every time I watch him, he almost always makes the first defender miss. He's very physical. The way he and I can see him, like I was saying, being this year's Zay Flowers, where if he has another really good season, even though he's from a small school, he plays well against big school defenders. I can see him doing really, really well. So that's Malachi Corley for me.
You're going to have to take this one, Dan, because the first time I watched him was about 10 minutes before we started. So I haven't seen too much of him at all.
So I hadn't got to him. I'd watched highlights, but I hadn't got to him sort of deep dive yet.
Not too many people are watching Western Kentucky, are they?
No. I was shocked that he was 210 pounds.
Yeah.
You watch him move, and he's electric with the ball in the hand. And then I looked at his size. I'm like, he's doing that at 210 pounds?
Yep.
It's crazy. And yeah, he's just one of those guys where, like you said, his average depth of target wasn't deep. You get him the ball quickly and in space, he's going to make defenders miss.
Yeah.
He's going to get you a lot of first downs just because he's getting the ball and he's moving straight away. And look, like you said, the first defender rarely brings him down, and he can get through other guys as well. So I like it. I wanted to get to him. I just ran out of time going into everyone. But I said to you before the show as well, we're going to have to do another show where we look at a lot more wide receivers because there's about 5 or 6 other guys that I want to get into pretty deep as well. And he's definitely one of them. He's probably top of the list that I would have got to next.
Yeah. And again, that's the point of this show is it's been very sort of like chalky, I guess, the first half of this show. But now that we're getting to these other guys, it's sort of like starting to plant your flags, and it's like, look out for these guys. Listen to this quote from him not too long ago about the season upcoming. He says, I believe I will triple crown it, leading the country in all statistics, just to be a group of 5 players whose Belindakoff finalists would be very special to me. So he wants to lead in, like, what is that? Receiving yards, touchdowns,
catches.
Receptions as well. And I mean, other than all the defenders, all the receivers who went to the draft this year, he did it. He's out of all these guys, he led in receiving. So I'm excited. I'm taken away by him. I wish he was playing at a bigger school. We'll have to roll with it now.
One of those things where you play for a small school, how much of your ability and your stats are just because you're going against other smaller schools, and how much of it comes down to your actual ability to be that all-around wide receiver and that sort of thing. But with him, I think his game translates no matter who they're playing against.
Yep. I mean, and just the last thing I'll say about him is, I talked about Austin Reed just a little bit, who, like, I don't foresee, it was his first season last year at Western Kentucky, so he was a freshman. Maybe he'll take like a huge step forward this season. We'll see. But I mean, he had 4,700 yards, but I think a lot of that was Malachi Corley. So yeah, that's my number 5. Let's, now that we've been through our top 5, I did say we should go to 6 because the first was so obvious. I didn't realize that the first 4 would be so obvious. So Dan, give me your number 6 player.
I've got Troy Franklin from Oregon.
Nice. I like that.
He's 6'3", 178. And he is a super versatile route runner. His hands are really good. The catches that he can come down with, he can high point the ball as good as anyone. And then you look at the way he moves at 6'3", not a lot of players can do that.
Mm.
And he's just elusive. And he might not have the biggest frame, but he's not easy to bring down either. So I think he had a big season last year. I don't think he cracked 900 yards though. He had 9 touchdowns.
891. So
basically. I think there's a high chance that he's going to get over 1,000 yards this year. Could quite easily be double-digit touchdowns. And I think his stock's going to skyrocket after another big year.
Do you think a lot of that will depend on Bo Nix?
Yeah. And I think we
and even just
spoke about it in the quarterback show that we expect a good season from him as well.
Yeah.
So I really think, Troy Franklin could find himself sort of up at wide receiver 4, even in this class.
Yeah, I had Troy Franklin 6 as well. The only reason I didn't have him higher is I wasn't a big fan of his from what the games that I saw, his crispness on his route running. It was that little bit, as I was saying, one of the things that really irritates me about his route sort of thing. It just wasn't as crisp that I like. But other than that, yeah, no, I had him pretty much in lockstep with what Yeti said.
He had some nice games, like Washington State, 5 catches, 137 yards. Okay, so it's not a huge school, but that is a huge divisional. Oh no, it's not divisional, but that's a huge matchup for them. And then the other one against UCLA, 8 catches, 132 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Like, that's a good game against a good UCLA team. So, yeah, excited to see what he can do. Oregon State, 8 catches, 78 yards, and 1 touchdown. He had 9 touchdowns on the season. So towards the end of the season, he was catching a touchdown every game in the last 4 games. That Oregon team should be good. Should be fun to watch.
Yeah, definitely.
And Brad, you were also saying that you had him there as well. So I just want to give my sort of one of my last players, which is AD Mitchell. And the reason I want to talk about AD Mitchell is, even though he's not like a huge stat guy, I think he had quite a bit of injury that he's been dealing with through last year. So he's playing now on Texas, but you would know him from playing with on Georgia the last few seasons. Do we know why he transferred? It's not a huge.
I haven't looked into him too much yet.
I wasn't sure if it was maybe like a playing time sort of thing. I'm not sure. I didn't actually look into what the transfer reason.
Yeah. But so not too much to say on him other than he's a good body, 6'4", 190 pounds. I think that might actually be up more like 200 now though. 65.3 receiving grade. His flashes are as good as anybody. 4 contested catches, 9 missed games. Yeah. But still managed to get 3 touchdowns. Again, not a lot of tape, but if you watch him play, AD Mitchell is very, very fun to watch. He's got a good point of catch. My comp for him was like Mike Williams. Big body guy, can get up there, grab the ball, come down with it. Yards after the catch, not a huge thing, but I think he's going to be really fun to watch. Would not be surprised if he has a really good season this season with Quinn Ewers, he could sneak, I think, into the first round.
And I'll be keeping an eye on him with Xavier Worthy there as well. Like for me, being able to watch those two play together will be fun. Right. But yeah, I like AD Mitchell, but like you said, there's not a lot of tape around to sort of, there's not a lot of game film to sort of watch for him. So that's where this year I'll be looking forward to seeing how he does with Quinn Ewers or Arch Manning, depending on what happens. But, the Texas wide receiver pair is going to be very interesting to watch this year.
There's some scary wide receiver rooms this year.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. I love what you're saying about that, because we didn't even talk about Florida State yet.
We haven't, no.
Are we ready to? I'm ready to.
Lead us off. No, let John go. Let John go.
No, I want Dan to talk about something, because I'm looking at Johnny Wilson, who I'm like very keen on, but just even looking at this Florida State room, like the more we dive in and do these episodes, the more I'm like, gee, this is going to be a top 5 school. Between Jordan Travis, we talked about Trey Benson last week. We're talking about Johnny Wilson now, and then Dan, you alluded to the idea that you might actually be looking at someone else.
Keon Coleman coming over to Florida State. He was at Michigan State last year. 6'4", 215 pounds. I hadn't got to him yet as much as I wanted to, but man, he is going to be really good. And like you said, you got Johnny Wilson there, who he's a monster. Like, how do you compare him with anyone that plays wide receiver?
6'7", isn't he?
Well, I don't think he's going to end up being 6'7". I think that's a little bit over, but even still, if he's just over 6'6" and he's 235 pounds, it's scary thinking how good he can be, because you think of someone that size, we've gone off Keon Coleman, but keep an eye on Keon Coleman this year.
I've
But
got
you
him
look at
playing
Johnny
at
Brooks.
Michigan State. Is that right?
He was at Michigan State last year, yeah. And he's
Oh,
skipping
okay.
Florida State this year, yeah.
I need to update my notes because I've still got him at Michigan State.
Yeah, so he's definitely one I'm keeping a close eye on this year as well.
Great.
But then we'll go to Johnny Wilson, and at that size, for him to be able to move the way he does, he's not an elite route runner by any means. He's going to be that guy that's a bit slow over the middle, but at his size, he's still going to beat defenders.
Yeah.
And then you look, I think his average was over 20 yards this season.
Yeah.
And you watch him get deep, and it's not just the way he can high point the ball. Like at his size, defensive backs are going to stand no chance at all. But once he gets moving, because of the size of him and the length of his legs and that, he's making ground on defensive backs. So they're trying to keep up with him from that, and then they're trying to stop him from getting the ball at his height. Like, how do you stop him?
He's such
So if he can work on his route running,
yeah,
and work on his, he had a fair few drops last year. If he can work on his hands more and eliminate those drops, and just work on fine tuning his route running, he's going to be an absolute weapon.
So ESPN has him listed at 6'7", 240 pounds.
yeah.
To put that in comparison, Darnell Washington this year was 6'7", 270 pounds. So he's almost really, that's probably his closest comp actually, is probably Darnell Washington.
So he's a converted tight end, right?
I don't think he is. No, I think he's just a flat out wide receiver.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I don't know if he'll stay there as he goes along in the NFL, but he's not that sort of wide receiver where you look at that size and you go, why do they play him at wide receiver?
Mm.
He plays as a wide receiver. So yeah, it's pretty crazy what he can do at his size.
He has an 82 receiving grade on PFF, 12 contested catches, 3.36 yards per route run, 306 yards after the catch, which I think, given his size, that is impressive. And the other thing, so last season, his last game of the season last year, 8 catches, 202 yards in the bowl game against Oklahoma. Just insane. 6 catches, 75 yards against Clemson, 3 catches, 111 yards against Georgia Tech. Not the biggest school, but I still think that that's fine. Back shoulder fades, they're like his strong point. He will just go up, grab the ball. He does sort of have a little bit of a problem with drops, as you were saying, and his route running bit to be desired. But I mean, at that size, yeah,
He's pretty stiff in his route running.
Yeah.
But as you said, expected for a guy 6'7".
And it doesn't stop him from winning over the middle of the field. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Please put him on the Arizona Cardinals so he can stand next to Rondale Moore and Hollywood and all the short guys. Just put him there just for the juxtaposition of seeing a height here and then down.
I just wanted to grab 2 more guys that I'm keeping an eye on for this season. One happens to be Antoine Wells Jr. from the South Carolina Gamecocks. So he'll be playing alongside Spencer Rattler, which should be fun. He's 6'1", 210 pounds, which is a nice size. 74 receiving grade on PFF and 7 contested catches, 555 yards after the catch. Interesting backstory about him that I was listening to with Trevor Sycamore and Connor Rogers was 0-star recruit coming out of high school. And he says he put it on himself that he didn't take school too seriously. Once he got to college, started to really like knuckle down, focus, and he sort of turned himself into this person. So I think that shows he has a really, really strong work ethic and desire to sort of, take on life like that, even at a young age. And then just the other guy that I was looking at that I want to look at closely for this season is Moose Muhammad. I do have here from Texas A&M. So I think Texas A&M could be a fairly unimpressive school to watch. Just depends on their defense mostly. But 6'1", 205 pounds, 77.7 receiving grade, 6 contested catches, 2.11 yards per route run. His dad was a wide receiver legend as well, similar to
The Panthers.
Marvin Harrison Junior.
Mushin Muhammad.
So
that's a name that goes back a bit.
That is. Did you guys have any other guys that you just wanted to give a quick shout out to?
No, I had the exact same as you, John. I want to see Antoine Wells, but I also want to see Moose Muhammad just because, as we sort of said with Marvin Harrison Jr., he's got that wide receiver pedigree background with his dad. So I want to see him, see how he progresses this year.
So I've got a couple guys that are, one's really under the radar, I think, and another one, I think we all know him, but he hasn't sort of been spoken about an awful lot. One of them's Lad McConkey from Georgia.
Yes, Lad McConkey.
Oh man, I love.
Not on my list
because
I wasn't like hugely impressed, but yeah,
I love watching him play. I just think he's one of those guys where he may not have the biggest NFL career, but he's just going to be that solid guy that you just play over the middle of the field, play him out of the slot. He can move around a bit. I'm just really interested to see how he'll go once he does come into the NFL. And I think my big sleeper this year, who I think can rise massively up the board, is Dorian Singer, who's now at USC.
Yeah, okay. I've not heard that name.
So he came from Arizona last year. He led the Pac-12 in receiving yards at 1,105 yards. Go back and watch the Arizona versus USC game from last year. USC's defense isn't good, but man, he torched them. He had 7 catches for 141 yards and 3 touchdowns. And I think it would have been at that moment where Lincoln Riley's gone, he's got to be on our side.
Yeah.
So USC's got a pretty deep wide receiver room. It'll be interesting to see who comes out of that as the number one guy this year after they've lost Jordan Addison now.
Yeah.
But Dorian Singer, 6 foot, 185. I think he plays bigger than his size. The way he can go up and get the ball is impressive. I just really think he could have a massive year this year and announce himself with this draft class as well. So he's my deep sleeper this year. So
yeah, alongside Mario Williams as well. I'm excited to watch. Brad, any last guys for you?
No, that was my list tapped out. You covered them, so no, I'm good to ready for the season to start.
Yeah, I'm excited. The last 3 players I just want to give a really quick shout out to is Roman Wilson on Michigan, Zachary Franklin on Ole Miss, and Ra Thomas on Georgia as well. So, I mean, exciting group of receivers to watch this season. I think, if we go through them, I'll go through them again just from top to bottom and then have a think about the kind of quarterbacks that they either have been playing with or are playing with and just kind of what that means to them. So we've got number 1, Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka is number 2, Rome Odunze 3, 4 was Malik Neighbors. Then we kind of chopped it up a little bit somewhere between who did you guys have again at number 5?
Xavier Worthy.
Yeah, Xavier Worthy.
I had Worthy at 4 and Neighbors at 5.
As well as Malachi Corley, Antoine Wells Jr., Johnny Wilson, Troy Franklin, Moose Muhammad. So a whole bunch of good guys there to watch. Awesome quarterbacks that they're all playing with as well. I'm very excited. There's less than 30 days till kickoff. The hype content's coming out as well. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. This has been really awesome to do. Programming going forward for the rest of August. We've got preseason. Hall of Fame game has just gone yesterday by the time you're hearing this. So we've got preseason week 1, week 2, week 3. We're going to be breaking down our favorite players that we're looking out for who are playing in the preseason, some low guys that we want to get. Other than that, you can follow me on Twitter at John Lloyd Roberts as well. Oh, are we calling it X now or are we calling it Twitter?
We are not calling it X.
Okay, thank you. That's what I wanted to hear. You can follow Brad on Twitter at BradBolt1, and you can follow Dan on Twitter as well at Beard_82, as well as the NFL Lab Network. If you're still sticking around, please subscribe to this. That would really, really help us. We've had some fantastic numbers, and it's awesome to hear that the reception that we've been getting. Everyone's been really enjoying this, and we're going to look forward to continuing to bring this for you all season long. Appreciate your time. We'll chat to you soon. This has been the Saturday Air Raid. Enjoy your weekend ahead.
Leave comments on YouTube as well.
as well. Thank you. Goodbye.
Let us know.